Hello everyone and welcome back to the Combat Intel Media. Today's top story comes straight from the heart of the Middle East and a statement that's shaking the diplomatic world. Iran's supreme leader, Ayatollah Ali Khamenei, has declared that cooperation with the United States is not possible as long as Washington continues to support Israel. This isn't just another round of political rhetoric, it's a defining message from Tehran at a time when tensions between Iran, Israel, and the U.S. are already at a dangerous high. Speaking to a large group of students in Tehran, Khamenei said, "The Americans sometimes say they would like to cooperate with Iran. Cooperation with Iran is not possible as long as the U.S. continues to support the Zionist regime, maintains military bases, and interferes in the region." He further added that only when the United States abandons its backing for Israel, withdraws its troops from the Middle East, and ends interference in regional affairs, will cooperation even be considered. For many analysts, this statement signals a complete diplomatic freeze, not just on nuclear negotiations, but on all forms of engagement between the two nations. Let's break down what this means. For decades, relations between Iran and the United States have been defined by mistrust, from the 1979 Islamic Revolution to sanctions, cyber attacks, and proxy wars. There's been little room for genuine cooperation. But in recent years, both sides have occasionally hinted at reopening dialogue. The U.S. has said it's ready for talks if Iran returns to compliance with nuclear limits. Iran, meanwhile, has demanded the lifting of sanctions. Now, with Khamenei's latest remarks, that faint hope seems gone. Iran's position is clear: as long as America stands with Israel, there can be no partnership, no trust, and no negotiation. So, why is this statement surfacing now? The answer lies in timing and context. The Middle East is once again on edge. Israel and Iran are engaged in a shadow conflict, from airstrikes in Syria to cyber warfare and covert operations. Iran's allies, including Hezbollah and the Houthis, have been clashing with Israel and Western forces in different hotspots. Meanwhile, the U.S. continues to supply weapons, funding, and intelligence to Israel. From Iran's perspective, America isn't just supporting Israel diplomatically, it's directly enabling Israel's military actions. Khamenei's comments reflect growing frustration that the U.S. presents itself as a negotiator, while simultaneously arming Iran's greatest enemy. This is more than political theater, it's Iran setting its red line in full public view. The message is directed at Washington but also at the wider Muslim world. Iran wants to be seen as the only power truly standing against what it calls Zionist aggression. This kind of language plays directly into domestic politics in Tehran and strengthens the image of Iran as the regional resistance leader. But diplomatically, it puts the United States in a tough spot. For Washington, maintaining support for Israel has always been non-negotiable. It's a cornerstone of U.S. policy, backed by both major parties and deeply rooted in domestic politics. So, for Iran to demand a reversal of that policy is effectively to say cooperation is impossible, period. Now, let's talk about what this means for the future. If we look back, every attempt at U.S.-Iran dialogue, from the Obama-era nuclear deal to indirect talks under Biden, depended on some level of mutual flexibility. Each time that flexibility collapsed under regional pressure. Now, after the Gaza conflict and rising anti-U.S. sentiment in the Middle East, the atmosphere is even more toxic. For the U.S., there are three possible strategies. First, Washington might ignore the statement altogether, treating it as another hardline speech meant for domestic audiences. That would mean business as usual, continuing sanctions, military presence, and alliance with Israel. Second, it could try indirect diplomacy, using European or Gulf intermediaries to keep communication open without public cooperation. This would allow both sides to maintain appearances while exploring behind-the-scenes channels. Third, and least likely, the U.S. could rethink parts of its regional approach, scaling back some military presence, or at least publicly calling for restraint by Israel. But such steps would face huge backlash at home. The truth is, none of these options lead to quick progress. Iran's conditions, ending Israel's support and U.S. presence in the region, are demands Washington cannot and will not meet. So what happens next? Most experts believe we are entering a prolonged phase of strategic stalemate. Iran will continue strengthening its alliances with Russia and China, expanding economic ties, and pursuing nuclear capability as leverage. The U.S. will respond with more sanctions, more military drills with Israel, and more deterrence in the Persian Gulf. That means both sides remain locked in confrontation, not open war, but not peace either. For Israel, Khamenei's remarks are actually useful. They reinforce the idea that Iran is uncooperative and extreme, justifying Israel's military buildup and ongoing coordination with Washington. For Iran's allies, from Iraq's Shia militias to Lebanon's Hezbollah, this statement serves as encouragement. The supreme leader is doubling down on the anti-U.S. anti-Israel stance. Now let's consider the global angle. Energy markets will likely react cautiously. Every time tension rises between Iran and the West, oil prices spike. Investors fear that an escalation in the Gulf, especially near the Strait of Hormuz, could disrupt 1/5 of global oil supplies. For Europe and Asia, especially countries dependent on Gulf energy, this means higher energy costs and economic pressure. And for countries like Pakistan or Turkey, this situation poses a delicate balancing act. Both maintain complex relations with Iran, and the U.S. Pakistan, in particular, relies on Gulf states for employment and trade, while sharing a long border with Iran. Escalating confrontation between Tehran and Washington could put Islamabad in a diplomatic bind. Now, let's take a look at possible outcomes ahead. In the short term, expect tougher rhetoric from both sides. Iran will continue positioning itself as the resistance power of the Muslim world, while the U.S. will reaffirm its ironclad support for Israel. In the medium term, expect proxy tension in Iraq, Syria, and the Red Sea, where U.S. forces and Iranian-backed groups often clash indirectly. And in the long term, unless there's a significant political change in either country, this standoff may last for years, freezing any hope of normalization or joint cooperation. The question many analysts are now asking is, could this statement mark the official end of any diplomatic engagement between Iran and the U.S.? The answer might be yes, at least for now. Tehran has moved from conditional cooperation to outright rejection. It's saying, if America wants talks, it must first end what Iran sees as occupation support. That's not negotiation language, that's confrontation. But behind the harsh words, both sides understand the costs of direct conflict. Neither wants a full-scale war. Iran knows that would devastate its economy and invite international intervention. The U.S. knows it would destabilize the entire region, affect oil flow, and draw in Russia and China. So, we're entering a phase of controlled hostility, where both nations keep up the pressure but avoid total escalation. Khamenei's words were not just a rejection of the U.S., they were a warning to the world. Iran will not compromise its ideology for diplomacy. It's a signal that Tehran's current path, resistance, self-reliance, and regional influence, will continue regardless of Western pressure. As we move forward, this confrontation could define Middle Eastern geopolitics for the next decade. And once again, Israel stands at the center of that equation, and a key factor that prevents Iran and the U.S. from finding even the smallest common ground. For now, Washington and Tehran remain on opposite sides of a deep divide, with no bridge in sight. This is Combat Intel Media, bringing you the world's most critical defense and geopolitical updates. Stay tuned, subscribe, and hit the bell icon so you never miss our next in-depth report. Thank you for watching, and we'll see you in the next broadcast.